Hey everyone, this is Dr. Rayburn. I want to give you a tutorial on how to go about doing good research for your main project for this course. So I think the best way to do that is for me just to show you. So here's how you go about it. I'm going to start a new web page and go to the Lee website and go to the libraries page. And down here you're going to see this bar called databases. Click on that. And it's best to use a categorical database. This is how I recommend that you do it. If you scroll down here, you'll see religion and philosophy. That's where we're going to go. Depending on the project, you may also need to use behavioral and social sciences. But let's start here. I'm going to click on religious studies. And the main database that I want you to use is the ATLA religion database. This is your primary source. Now you're going to have to log in. And you can find the login information in Portico. Right now it's the spring of 2015 when I'm recording this. And right now the username is spring 2015 and the password is prayer. Depending on when you're watching this, because I hope to reuse this in later semesters, the password and the username may be different. You'll need to look those up on Portico. But you go ahead and submit that. And I guess I'll save it. I'll have to change it later. And it's going to bring you to a screen like this. It should look very much just like this when you get here. Now there are a couple of ways you can go about searches, and I'm going to show you. So let's suppose I'm doing a project in practical theology, and the topic that I've chosen to do is pastoral care and dying. That would be a good topic to discuss, and I've looked up some scripture references there that pertain to that. And so now I need to find some research that helps me with that. So one thing I can do is I can just type in keywords. Like I can type in dying and click search. Now you see that gives me 1,878 search results. Now there's some key things I want you to do to refine your searches. So come over here to refine results. The first thing you need to do is limit it to full text. This means these are articles where you can read the entire article on your computer. If it's not available for you to read the whole thing, it's not of any use to you at all. So limit it to full text, and you can see that's already gotten us down to like 600. The second thing I want you to do is limit it to academic journals. About half of these, or almost half of these, are reviews of books. That's not going to do you any good because I'm not asking you to go find books on this. You need actual research you can use right now. So limit it to academic journals, and I'll say more about why we want to use journal articles in just a minute. But you can see right now we've gotten ourselves down to 347, but that's still a lot. That's too many to try to sort through. So let's come up here and let's add in a second search parameter. Because it's not just about dying, it's also about pastoral care. And let's see what this does for us. Now this gets us down to 55 articles. That's becoming more manageable. But I can also look here and see that some of these are really old. That doesn't mean they're not useful, they might be useful. But let's just say we scroll this up and make it more recent. Now we're down to 27 articles about dying and pastoral care that have been written in the last 23 years or 25 years. And 27 articles is enough for me to scroll through. And then you can just scroll through and look at the titles and see, do any of these appeal to you? You can add them to a folder if you want to look at them, or you can just click on them and look at them, and you can just click on the full text. I recommend adding the ones, I recommend going through one time and looking at all the titles and just picking some and saying, I think I like that one. I don't really want to deal with personality disorders. That's an important thing, but I'm just thinking more generally about pastoral care. Intensive care, I think I do want to look at that because that's important. Requests of the dying, maybe you want to talk about that. Maybe you want to talk about that. No, don't want to talk about that. Hospice, okay, I want to look at that. Grieving with the family, yeah, I think I want to look at that. And you can see right here, this is an entire journal. This is in the Journal of Family Ministry. Do you see that? There's an entire journal dedicated to family ministry. Now here's one that's in chaplaincy today that's about chaplaincy. I'm not really concerned about chaplaincy for the project that I want to do, so I'm going to leave that out. Dying, grieving, faith, and family, a pastoral care approach. I think I want to look at that. And so just go through here and you can hit the next button and see the next 10 articles. And you can add more. It's already retained the ones you have in your folder. So your little folder icon up here is open now with stuff in it. So you can add a few more from the second page. I don't see any of these that I necessarily want to add. I'm acting like I'm really writing. This is just an example for you, and I'm already doing my thing I usually do. This is how I go about my research many times. So anyway, add a few more, add the ones you want. Here's one about children that are dying. That might be important to you. That might be a section you want to add to your paper. So once you've scrolled through and you've gotten the ones, then you go to your folder. And here they all are. I've gotten 7 articles that I want to look at. And then you can click on the link for the full text, and there it will come up. And it'll be different depending on your computer, but there will be some way in which you can save it to your computer. There will be a way in which you can print the whole article out. If you prefer to use hard copies, you can do that as well. And let me get into now the reason I think journal articles are so important. This is a journal article written by a scholar, Janet Ramsey. I don't know where she teaches at, but if we scroll to the very bottom, it might tell us. Sometimes it will tell us. Yes, Janet Ramsey is Professor Emeritus of Congregational Care Leadership at Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. Emeritus there means she's been a professor of congregational care for a long time. She probably has a lot of wisdom and experience and has been doing reading and research and teaching in this subject for a number of years. And what Dr. Ramsey has done is distilled her wisdom down for us into a short essay that starts on page 57 of this journal and goes to page 64 in less than 10 pages. Right? Yeah, in less than 10 pages, she has given us something we can use in writing our own papers. And this is why I want you to focus on journal articles. It's too much to ask you in writing these short papers for your main projects to try to work in 5 or 6 books. That's just too much to do. Journal articles give you focused research in a very short, compressed reading that's zeroed in on one specific thing. Like her article here is about fear. Fear, of course, is a major component in dying. So how do you, in giving pastoral care, deal with fear? Well, here Dr. Ramsey is giving you some of her wisdom on what that would look like. That's really important. It's also very specific, which helps you because you guys have a lot to do, and asking you to do a ton of reading is too much. So here's another one. Now see, this one is a review that's snuck in. So we're just going to ignore that one. Let's see. Let's go to this lament. You won't always. Some of these you will still have to sort out, and we can look at this one. It says it's only 2 pages long. That's probably not long enough. Yeah, even though I deselected reviews, sometimes they still sift through. So she's giving you a little short opinion and synopsis of a book. And if you're doing a larger project, that's really useful, but you're not. So let's go over here. So let's look at this lament of a dying child. Now see there, I made a mistake. I clicked on the detail record, which you can do, but what I wanted to click on was the full text. So I can click on that here, or I can go back and click on it here. Well, this is just a poem. That's not very helpful either. So far, I'm 1 for 3. Let's look at our intensive care article. This is from the Journal of Pastoral Care, and this is, again, a good article. This is Ann Simmons, who has a DMin and works in chaplaincy services in Canada. And she is writing a book, an article here about dealing with people who are in intensive care, and specifically the experiences of doctors and nurses dealing with dying patients in intensive care. That might be for you an important perspective. It might not, depending on how your paper wants to go. Anyway, so you can sort through these and see which of these work for you and which of these don't. Generally speaking, you need one good source like this per page of your paper, or at least one every other page. So if you've got a 10-page paper, you would need 5 to 10 of these sources, because you want to distill what they're saying even further down into a paragraph or a few sentences, and then you want to interact. So what you might want to say is, if we went back to Dr. Ramsey's article, you might want to say, in this 10-page article, Dr. Ramsey makes 5 points. And here's her first point that I can state in a sentence or two. And here's what I think about that. And here's her next point in a sentence or two, and here's what I think about that, etc., etc. If you did that for all 5 of her points, that would take up about a page. So that's one way you can use this. So that's how you do topical searches for articles in the ATLA database. But I want to do a brand new search. And so when you're completely done, make sure you've saved everything you want to save. You can also email yourself records, not the full files, but you can email yourself records. You can print this list out if you want. But really what you're going to want to do most of the time is get access to the full article and either save it for reading later or print it out, or both. But let's go to a new search, because there's another way you can do this, and this is not something a lot of people use. You see, I've still got these in my folder, which will stay there until I end this session. But like I said, I did some pre-work for this. So if I were writing a paper on pastoral care and dying, one of the key things I would do is look at Scripture. What does Scripture have to say? So here I've started a Word document with a handful of scriptures that deal with dying. There are, of course, a lot more than this. There are some examples. So let's look here. John 14, 1 through 4. Jesus says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I'm going." I love that passage. So let's say this passage really stood out to you, and you're thinking that you wanted to do something with this passage for your paper on pastoral care and dying. Just for instance, you can go back to the database, and way up here at the top, instead of doing a topical search or a word search, you can do a scripture search. And this is an important feature. And once you do that, you're going to come up on a list of books of the Bible. Of course, we need to click next because we want to go to John. We have to click next again. So here's John. Click expand. And then we go to the chapter we want, chapter 14. And you'll see it's listed by verse. Now this is verses 1 through 4 that we wanted to look at. So now it's giving me all of the articles in its database, which is a lot, that deal with this particular text. It's giving me 36 hits. Now again, I want to limit to full text, because if I can't read it, it's no good to me. I want to limit it to academic journals. And I have 12. And I can sort through these the same way. I can add them to my folder, which still has my other ones in there. Let's say this is about Easter. Here's one about the providence of God and Christological perspective. Now, providence is a major issue when you're dealing with dying. So I think I want to add that in. I'm not really concerned as much about literary structure and things like that. Here's one about the ascension. Now, ascension can, I think, be helpful when you're thinking about dying, because it's Jesus leaving as well. So I want to add that in too. So I can go back to my folder, and you can see these articles have been added. By the way, if I decide that something doesn't work, like this poem about lament for a dying child, I can check that and then I can remove it right there, delete items. That's going to remove the selected items. So once you've sorted through your folder, you can winnow it back down to the ones that you actually do want. And then you can keep going. Let's do another new search. And let's find another scripture passage. So how about Romans 8, 16 and 17? We suffer that we may be glorified. That's an important passage as well for you thinking about dying and suffering. So I can go back to scriptures. I'll have to click next a couple of times at least. There's Romans. There's chapter 8. There's verse 16. But actually, I think it was more verse 17 that I wanted. So let's click on verse 17. And there you are. Now I have 41. I do a full text limit. I do an academic journal limit. And now I have 17 articles that I can sift through. So that's how you go about using the ATLA database to find good, specific research that will help you write your journal articles. You can type in virtually anything in these search fields. If you want to do a new search, if you were thinking about writing an article about Karl Barth, you could type in Karl Barth. What does Karl Barth say about dying? It found no results. Let's take the Karl out. Sometimes that helps. There we go. There are a few articles there. This one's about martyrdom. We probably don't want to talk about that necessarily. You get the idea. You can do specific name searches. You can do author searches. You can do scripture searches. Now there are other databases you can use as well. So let's go back to the library's website. Let's go back to our databases. Now, depending on how your computer works, once you've logged in, you should stay logged in. That's how it works on mine. But let's say I also want to think about dying from a sociological or a psychological perspective. You can go to any of these and learn a lot as well. So let's go to a psychology database, and you can see it brings up a similar format, although it's searching different databases here. So let's just type in dying. And here we go, 89,000 articles. We can do our full text limit. It should always be your first limit. That cuts it in half. We can limit it to academic journals. That cuts it way down again. We can make it more recent. That's still a lot. So then you would want to let's try our pastoral care again and see what that gets us. Here we go. Now these are articles from different journals. This is from the journal Pastoral Psychology. You didn't find this in the ATLA database, but now we're finding it here, Self-Psychology and End-of-Life Pastoral Care. Well, we definitely want to take a look at that. A hospital chaplain's reflection of the bedside ministry to terminally ill and dying people. Well, I think I pretty much want to read that. That looks really good. And there again, here is an article that's it's 21 pages long. And part of that's probably references, so it's around 18 or 19 pages long, I'm guessing. And you probably will find some really important, really useful wisdom in there. Trauma patients. Now some of these, sometimes you'll find a linked full text instead of a PDF. That gets us the same thing. We can add that as well. Here's an article about regret. Regret is a major issue You're dealing with people that are dying. Prison hospice, that may be something you want to look into for your paper. It might not be. Hospitality. Dying right, which probably means dying well. You could add that if you wanted to. You get the idea. So here's what I'm saying. For your project, I want you to use only academic journal articles. I don't want you trying to use books. Your textbooks are basic information that we're covering in class, but they should not be sources for your project. Scripture, of course, is a source, but it doesn't count as one of the research sources. It's just a given that you're using Scripture. You should be using Scripture, but Scripture itself doesn't count. And basic aids like Bible dictionaries and Bible concordances are they're not on a level with Scripture, but they sort of go in that box. They're just basic understanding of Scripture. So I want you to use only journal articles for your main project. And like I said, at least half as many pages as you have. So if you're writing a 20-page paper, a minimum of 10 journal articles. And 20 would be better. And the thing is, the more of these you can get, the easier it makes your job. Because you're just reporting on what other people have said and then reflecting on it, which takes a lot of the mental work out. So using good academic research takes a lot of the strain, the mental strain off of you, because here are people who are thinking deeply and thinking well about these issues. So that makes it easier on you. Using journal articles instead of books makes it easier on you in that you have a lot less to read. They're getting straight to the point. They're getting straight to the specific issues that you're trying to deal with in your paper, which is why you need more of them. So those are the basic parameters I want you to follow. And you can use that for psychology. You can use that. We could go back and do a sociology search. You can do an anthropology search. I hope this helps you. If you have any questions, send me an email or give me a call and we can discuss them. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye now.